Well, surely by now you've heard there is another heir to the British throne, and Prince William and his wife Kate have named him George Alexander Louis, otherwise known as His Royal Highness Prince George of Cambridge.
And although the new prince shares the name of many royals before him, this George's childhood could be quite a bit different than his predecessors. And joining us now to explain why is VOA London reporter Henry Ridgwell.
So Henry, you have some very unique perspective on this story as both a reporter and a British citizen. So why would you say there is so much fascination surrounding this royal baby?
Well, I think it's the sense of history. It's the sense of history of an institution that can be traced back millennia, give or take the odd break here or there, where revolting English threw them out of Buckingham Palace. But it's that sense of history and pomp and pride and circumstance in the royal family.
Hey, Henry, what is the significance behind the name George, and how are the Londoners taking to it?
Well, it's a very popular name. In fact, it's the 12th most popular name in Britain last year. So they've gone a little bit with fashion, but I think it's really history that has dictated the choice. As you've already said, there have been 6 Georges who have taken the throne already in Britain, the most recent being George VI, who was the Queen's father and, of course, was on the throne during World War II and led the country through that conflict. And his predecessor, George V, was on the throne in World War I and visited the troops on the front line and so on. So it's a great admiration for those 2 Georges. Many historians say the previous 4 Georges of the 18th and 19th centuries weren't quite so well behaved. Apparently they preferred to play cards and gamble and chase women, but fortunately that's from a former period.
Now, before we go, Henry, Prince William has said that he wants to give his baby, Prince George, as normal an upbringing as possible, but you've described how much attention, really, we've paid throughout the years, throughout the decades, to the royal family. How is that, how possible is it for the prince to have a normal life?
Impossible, I think, is the short answer. Prince William and Kate have said that they're going to give him as normal an upbringing as possible, probably more normal than he had with his brother Prince Harry, because the media have now come to an agreement with the royal family since the tragic death of William's mother, Princess Diana, to give them more space, to give this baby more space as he's growing up through being a toddler and into his teenage years. But I think it will be a much warmer, perhaps a much more normal upbringing for Prince George than many of the previous royal babies in earlier centuries and earlier decades of the 20th century. They said they had a very isolated, very lonely upbringing within the royal family. I think it's going to be much warmer. Prince William and Kate haven't hired a nanny. He had a nanny himself, but they haven't hired one, so they're being very hands-on parents. So I think Prince William is very determined, along with Kate, to give him as normal an upbringing as possible. And of course, lastly, they have got that bolt hole of Kate's parents' property just outside London, which gives them a bit of an escape, because William has said how much he likes it, because it's much more middle class, if you like, than his own upbringing and than his residences in a country that is, of course, obsessed with class.
Of course. Well, Henry, thank you so much for joining us. Always great to have you on, and I know there will be immense interest to continue.
Well, I'm sure over there in London there will be.
And here as well. It's
yes,
people around the world actually are very interested in this prince.
I go see the baby.
Of course.